Just Eff It. Hi, I'm Romy, an identity coach helping others who struggle with their sexual identity and families of queer youth find their path of understanding and acceptance.
And I'm Carla, a mom empowerment coach empowering moms to own their new identities and motherhood journeys.
And together we are the EFFing Madres. We are here to invite you guys into stories of some inspiring madres
who have changed their lives through an Eff It moment. So here we go. Just Eff It.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. This is Romy, this is Carla. We are the EFFing Madres, and yeah, what do we do on Mondays? We get into conversations with some madres, some moms that have said Eff it, and by saying Eff it, they are walking through and doing big things. It can be a mental shift, a job, a move. It's so many things. We've had so many different Eff it moments that we want to honor, but it's inspiring and it empowers us. It empowers our guest. It's just conversations of women coming together and being like, fuck yeah, you did that? How? You know?
Yeah.
What'd that feel like? And so we get excited every week to come and talk with someone. And yeah, we're two Latinas, two best friends. We're girl moms, you know, we're in our 40s. We said fuck it and started this podcast. And we've got somebody pretty amazing on today. Carla, who are we talking to today?
We're speaking with Gila Pfeiffer. And she wrote a book called Nearly Departed, and it's the adventures of loss, cancer, and other inconveniences, which, as I was reading through her description of her book, there's a lot of humor, and just that alone should give you insight of the humor that is in this book over something that is very serious and very traumatic, as she's had a lot of cancer in her family. So I'm the Eff It moment is about like doing I believe about the preventative stuff, but and advocating for herself and writing this book. So I'm really excited to hear her story, and I'm excited to hear her book because I think the Audible is going to be dropping pretty soon, and she's the one that's going to be narrating it. So that's going to be really fun.
Yeah,
I can't wait for that either. All right, so we're going to bring her in just a second. Gila Pfeiffer here, and we're just going to jump right into the questions. So the first question to you is, what shifted your mindset to say Eff it with the moment that you're going to share with us today?
I've had quite a few Eff it moments, but the big mind shift I'm thinking of is the moment that I found out that at 34 I was diagnosed with breast cancer after spending about a decade and a half doing everything I could do to not get breast cancer. And that's when I was just like, literally, Eff it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes, I was reading a little bit of what about your book, Nearly Departed. Yes. And you talked about, or you share all the preventative ways that you were trying to avoid because cancer ran in your family, you lost your parents to cancer. What was that like doing all that preventative stuff? What was that?
It was a mission of mine. My mom died at 42. Her mom died at 49 of breast cancer. And my dad died at 55 of colon cancer. But I think so by the time I was 30, I was the oldest living member of my entire family. So yeah, I mean, it's people, there's a lot of breast cancer in the news and celebrity breast cancer, and not to take away from anyone's, but it's why I'm well equipped to talk about it and why nothing shocks me anymore, because that's the situation I found myself in. But in terms of prevention, she was diagnosed when I was only 18 and she died when I was 20. So from 20, I was thinking about breast cancer way more than most 20-year-olds. And it was the 90s. I did everything I could at the time, whatever was available to me, which was finding a specialist, learning how to do a breast self-exam. And between ages 20 and 30, I got married, had kids, continued with prevention. More screenings became available to me. At 30, I had to fight for my first mammogram because they wanted to wait till 40. So there was anything that I could find available to me. In that window, the internet came into being. There were a lot of things that we take for granted today. Maybe in 20 years, there'll be things that we take for granted then that don't exist now. But anything that became available, I immediately jumped on it. So it went from self-exams and doctor screenings to genetic testing for the BRCA gene when it became available in the early 2000s. Surprise, surprise, I am a BRCA1 carrier, no shocks there. And then preventative double mastectomy at 34. So it really was an all-encompassing, like, to answer your question, what was the prevention like? It felt, and I'm not exaggerating when I say, critical and vital and life-saving.
Yeah. I mean, I can't. My father passed away from cancer, and I have a lot of friends who have also
Oh
had
God.
moms who passed away from breast cancer. A friend that is in her 30s and has breast cancer, and I understand what you say when it's like when you've seen it or it's been your life or your family. You're doing everything you can, right, to like prevent that. It becomes a reality because it's so real and it's so close to you, you know. And good on you for taking that step and not ignoring it, right, and noticing these and like doing what you had to do to catch it, right? What kind of opportunities have opened up for you since saying F it and doing this?
Well, first of all, the biggest opportunity is that I saved my life because
Yes.
to carry on the story, I always like to tell the story up until that point, and then
Yeah.
it's like, oh wait, there's more.
Yeah.
I had the preventative double mastectomy at 34, and it was 5 years before Angelina Jolie did it, and making it a household name. When I did it, everyone was like, "Why? That sounds drastic. Why would you do that?" I just knew in my gut that it was my only way out of this. And in that surgery at 34, with four little kids who were at the time 1, 3, 5, and 7 years old, uh, they found early but aggressive breast cancer in one breast. So the preventative surgery went turned into life-saving surgery.
Hmm.
So the number one opportunity that opened up was validation that I had made the right choice, and I'd gone in the opposite direction of my mom, who, for whatever reasons, and I write about this in the book, took a more bury your head in the sand approach, and I
Yeah.
just felt like that's not going to work. So that was the big one.
Huge one. Huge one. I
It's
love that you
it's
said
kind of
that.
the
Like,
most important one.
yeah, you saved your life, you know? No big deal. You
Yeah, but more than that, I saved other people's lives. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not here like I'm not, my cape's flying behind me. I was the oldest of five kids, and as I said, I was the oldest living member of my family because I did what I did. My younger sisters, all of whom were supportive of my decision, but this was 2008. They're like, we don't really want to do any of that. It sounds a bit much. They ran to get gene tested, and two of them in their 20s were BRCA positive. And guess what they did? They had preventative double mastectomies. So when you talk about saving a life, the other opportunity it opened for me was a platform from which to speak about this from a place of expertise and knowledge and personal experience. So I'm not just talking about an article I read. I'm like, hey, here's what everyone has to do, and here's how many people this impacts. So it opened up an opportunity for me to become a passionate breast cancer prevention advocate.
Absolutely. My God. What were you going to say, Romy?
Well, you bring up Angelina, and Carla knows her brother is my partner, and I know their mom who died of breast cancer, and I was there when she was sick for most of the time. At the end of her life, I was there and watched it come back, watched her fight it. Then I remember Angie getting also that test, and she was very public about it, and it did bring awareness to people going, we're going to catch it early, we're not going to go through what our parents went through, we're going to do this. And I think the more people like you guys who are sharing this, that it's in your family, that you are doing this, you do save other people's lives. You almost give a permission to say, no, we're going to get ahead of this, we're going to take these big actions, right, and prevent this.
More than permission.
Yes.
I remember the day that op-ed dropped. It was 2013, and I can viscerally feel right now how I felt reading that, because
Yep.
my first reaction was like, "Oh, she stole my funds," like, get your own idea. But obviously, I say that tongue in cheek because what she did was what I was doing on a smaller scale, which is,
Yep.
one person at a time in my little community and my sisters, which to me is my world. She was bringing to the national then international stage, and she went on later to have her ovaries out, which I did too. And I just thought, how wonderful to have. She doesn't know that she's helping my
Mhm.
mission, but she's helping my mission. So I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
It makes me mad though that when you were doing all your preventative stuff that you had to fight for your mammogram. Considering your line of history and the fact that there was cancer in your family, you had to fight to get your mammogram. That sounds absolutely absurd.
Well, it does, but it's also still happening today. It's still in the news, these stories about women having, being told by their doctors. I don't know who these doctors are who say, like, oh, you're too young, you have nothing to worry about. Like, do
Right.
you not know how cancer works? Cancer doesn't care how old you are, especially if you have a family history. And I remember this is in the opening of my book where I'm filling out an intake form about my family history, and I'm calling to schedule my first mammogram, and at first the receptionist said, "Oh, we only start at 40 at 40." And I said, "Well, I'll be dead by 40." And I did have to fight with the insurance company, and eventually they came around. Look, they're the bean counters and pencil pushers, and women especially, but all people have to advocate for themselves when it comes to health. And that is what I did. And that's what I'll tell everyone else to do. Be annoying, fight. Do you want your life? Get it.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen. When I watched my father get diagnosed and 3 years of don't eat hamburger, you're stressed, you're just stressed, go to the gym, avoiding actual doing testing that could have saved his life, and he died 3 years later. The only way we caught it was being advocates and not leaving and fighting and arguing with doctors by the last year saying, we're not leaving. Do more work. Do the work. You have to speak up for yourself in this world. They're not doing it for you. And they're noticing that cancer is running in women so much younger now.
Yeah.
So many breast cancer, is happening within like women way below 40.
Look at Olivia Munn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christina Applegate had it,
Yeah.
when she was young. And those are just, the celebrities are there. The Angelinas are there to,
to bring awareness.
To get our attention.
Yeah.
Because for every one of them, there's thousands, if not tens of thousands,
Yes.
we'll never hear of. So
Yes.
it's like, let them use their voices to ask for it. And this is not to rag on doctors. I know a lot of wonderful doctors, but at the end of the day, you're looking at statistics and they're like, well, statistically, you're not. I'm like, well, I'm not a statistic, and my family are not statistics. I am here as an individual. And my recommendation to anyone is that if you feel in your gut, that something is wrong, you have a right to have every screening possible to eliminate it. Prove me wrong. You think there's nothing wrong? Let's find out. Let's make sure.
Yeah. I mean, the studies, the health studies in women, though, have not been like, it's barely been in the last few years that they're actually doing like trials of specifically women. Like, even when it comes to menopause and understanding what happens in a woman's body is a very new thing.
Why is that? We know that that's because historically medicine was a male.
Yeah, it's all focused on men.
For men.
Yeah.
It's all for men.
But it was studied by men. So they're like, well, let's check out our friends and see how they respond to these treatments.
That's what Carla and I just listened to that whole episode, and the way they talked about medical school and some of the people that we've listened to, they didn't even cover half the stuff around women. And these people are leaving medical school with no knowledge about like women's bodies. So like, yes, you have to be an advocate and do a little bit of your own research and play with the doctors in order to get things done right now. Us as women do need to keep speaking up and talking about it and bringing awareness in whatever communities or families we're in, right? To say we have to take some of this upon ourselves. They're not going to come in and just do this for us. They're going to let us wait.
But it is shifting, though.
So it's what?
It is starting to shift. Like,
absolutely.
You know what I mean? So there's definitely that light in the tunnel at the end of the tunnel. We're starting to see a bit of that more now.
It's shifting because, I think it's patient driven. And it's also, I suspect, certainly from some of my, friends in real life and people I've met on Instagram who are medical professionals, who are women, they're shifting it too. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't want this to come across as, you got to, prepare for battle when you go in there. It's not like that, but it's more just advocate for yourself. And I always say, advocate for yourself like you would for someone you love.
Yes.
For your child, you'd bang down every door. Do the same thing for yourself. And it's less because you want to find something and more because you want to eliminate any suspicious anything, any possibilities. I agree. It's gotten a lot better. Screening has gotten better. Genetic testing. The human genome was sequenced, I think it was 2005. So I got gene tested also around that 2005. We're not even 20 years out. And it's amazing the things that they can do with genetic testing.
Yeah.
I just posted this morning. There was something that went up on social media. I haven't looked into it, so I don't know the validation like behind it. But it was basically like they have a new technology that came out and they can detect it 4 years earlier than it starts to like. And I was like blown away. I shared it because I was like, this is like amazing news. We should be able to start catching it sooner, and that they're doing the work to do that.
I think, well, that was AI.
Yeah,
so
AI
I think with AI technology, which I think that's the positive aspect, or will be the positive aspect of AI coming into play, that it will be able to advance medically and help us, stay healthier and younger longer. So thank God that is coming. I mean, there's downsides to AI as well, but but
That's a
that's at
whole
least
other podcast.
that's a whole other podcast. But at least medically, I think that there's going to be some real advances for sure.
Yes.
So my next question for you is, okay, so when you had this effort moment, what things did you learn about yourself through this process, like positive, negative things? Like what did you get to learn about yourself?
I learned, um, I mean, I've always been a pretty self-aware person. So for me to learn something new about myself, like, I look back at some of my old, videos or diaries, and I'm like, well, that's just who you always were, I guess. I guess you cracked jokes about lots of inappropriate things to cope. That's who you are. And that's who you'll always be.
Yeah.
Yeah, Romy's raising her hand.
Yeah.
But what I did learn is that there's really you I can do a lot more than I think I can. You think you know your limits, and I think a lot of people learn this when they're in crisis. You think you know your
Yes.
limits until you have to be in that situation. And so, in my book, I have some interludes within the narrative. There's a few like sort of like little treats interspersed, and one of them is a list, um, what not to say to people in cancer treatment that people actually said to me. And it's kind of like almost like a satirical humor list, but based on things people actually said to me. And one of them was, oh, I could never do what you're doing. And I'm like, yeah, you could.
Yeah, you
You
could, and
just
you
haven't
would.
had to
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
would. Yeah.
You'd be
So I
forced.
guess
I
the
mean,
lesson
you
is,
have to.
we're all stronger than we think we are. And
Yeah.
I was surprised to find that about myself. Like I too would have thought there were things that were unimaginable or impossible. I'm like, well, here I am.
We only
Yeah.
know how strong we are though once we're challenged with it. You don't know what you can lift if you haven't tried lifting it, right? You don't know what you can handle if it hasn't been presented to you. So and no one knows what they're capable of until they're faced with a situation in which you move through it or you don't. And your option without like standing up to this like situation is you die, right? So like you are strong enough.
And I want to say one more thing that I learned, and that's I learned how to ask for help. I've
Yes.
never been a good helper asker, and I learned to yeah, you're raising your hand because that's what we do. We're strong, we're tough, we're gritty,
We
but
don't need it.
that's
That's not a weakness.
ridiculous because not
Yeah.
only do we need help, but there are people who love us who want to help the same way we'd want to help them. So I learned who to ask for help and how to ask for help, and that was something that stayed with me. Actually, that's a really important one.
It
Yeah.
is a really important one, and it is so true. Like that's the only reason why I started to be better about asking for help, because I tried to flip it and be like, well, if someone asked me, I would be so willing to help them. So why wouldn't someone be willing to help me? And that's literally what got me to be more willing to ask, because I was like, I'd do it. So we
You'd
need to
rather be the
remember that.
helper than the helpee. So
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and we do. We can't do everything alone, and I think us moms go into motherhood too thinking that we can, and quickly we realize, oh my God, I need some support, right? I need some help. It's bigger, and we're not weak. Okay, we need to remove that for reaching out and needing people in any situations that come into our lives. We're handling a lot. I want to ask you then, through those hard times and the negative things about asking for help and negative self-talk about going through this, then how did you push through it? How did you keep going? How did you push that negative talk away?
I very much lived in two worlds at the same time. There was the world of my household and my kids. And by the time I was diagnosed, I had a full time fashion career, and that kind of went to part time in consulting. And then I decided, and I was in the fortunate position to be able to focus on raising the kids while my husband, kept his, took care of his end of the household.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very focused on that. And one of the things that I was determined to do in this whole cancer situation was shield my kids from it. I just actually wrote a personal essay about this on today.com where, the headline is, I kept my cancer a secret from my kids, and here's why. And essentially, it helped me as much as it helped them. So the
Oh,
way I was able to sort of keep things at bay was to kind of live in this pretend world. The pretend world became my household where I was all about bedtime and bath time when I could, when I was feeling up to it. When I wasn't, my friends were amazing. They'd whisk my kids away for sleepovers, and kids aren't going to be like, why am I getting a sleepover on a Tuesday? They just take it because they can't believe their luck. So I kept myself really focused on the day to day. We were also at the time preparing for a move to London for my husband's job. That's where I'm talking to you from right now. We're still in London 15 years later. But there was that world. And then there was my reality of having to go through treatment, having to have chemo, having my hair 100% come out like my doctor said it would, shielding my kids from that. There was a lot of, there were a lot of things that I was engaged in and trying to keep things normal at home that took up a lot of my energy and headspace, so I couldn't really focus on what was happening. Like I just kind of got through it. And I think it's a bit of a roundabout answer to your question, but there was no time for the negativity. It was like, tra la la, another day of getting them off to school. Everything's fine, nothing to see here. And no, 2 years later is when everything sort of the adrenaline, wore off, and I was like, what just happened? And I spoke to a therapist. But in it, um, there was no time for negativity. It was like, okay, you saved your life. Now you have to keep on going. You can't just stop now.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating to hear this approach because, being a child of a cancer, parent and going through the experience of him being sick, right? The whole journey with him, it's traumatizing. It does take away the last few years of your life with them because it's in that state, right? Instead of, it's interesting to hear your approach. And I want to say I've never heard anyone do it like this, but it does seem like that makes sense because you can't focus in the woe is me if you're trying to focus on how do we navigate the day and look normal. It did consume enough space so that you can't fall into like the victim space of it, right? Which we all do, and the sadness of it. What a blessing to your kids that you were able to save your life, but also they didn't have to go through some deep dark thing with you.
Well, thank you for
Yeah.
saying that because actually it's a bit of a controversial thing I decided to do. And don't go to today.com, don't go to today's Instagram and look at my
The
posts there,
comments. Yeah.
and don't look in the comments because I looked at them. I have thick skin. I don't care.
Yeah.
I stand by what I stand by, and everyone's entitled
Yes.
to their opinion. But there were a lot of like, well, I believe in sharing everything with my kids, and honesty is the best policy. In my piece, I write some parents think honesty is the best policy. It wasn't me being dishonest. Essentially, I told them, remember they were 1, 3, 5, and 7.
Yeah.
Picture those ages and what those look like.
Mm-hmm.
All I said was, and I had a reconstruction from my stomach, fat, and muscle. I said, Mommy's going to have a surgery that's on her stomach that's going to keep her healthy. You can figure that out, right? Um, Grandma and my friends, and they'll be around to help. Mommy's going to be recovering in a special chair. It was a lazy boy. I'll be sitting funny. You can come visit me in my room, but Mommy's going to need some time to, get better, and you'll get everything you need from everyone else. That's all they needed to know. I wasn't prepared to then tell them the next part, which was, how do you explain cancer? Also, how do you explain cancer that's already been removed? So the chemo I had was preventative. The chemo I had was like, look, you probably don't need this, but you're young, you're 34, you have a family history, and you're a BRCA positive. You should do this to make sure that there's no remaining cells. We
Mm-hmm.
weren't looking to shrink tumors. We weren't looking at scans. It was 8 rounds over 4 months, and I'm like, you know what? Instead of carrying their psychological weight and fears and questions alongside mine, which was hard enough, I decided to keep it to myself, which sounds impossible, but you know what? God bless me with kids who didn't ask a lot of questions. I slept in a hat. I showered in a shower cap because kids burst into the bathroom. They don't care. And I got away with it. And I knew I would tell them one day, which I did. Again, very dramatic point in the book. But to me, not only did I give them the gift of just not having to have any fear around something that I didn't think they needed to be afraid of, but I gave myself the gift of having to only carry my load and
Mm.
4 other little loads. And that, of course, took help from my neighborhood and friends to kind of put up the smoke and mirrors. And there are many parents who'll, tut and disagree. I'm like, that's cool. You can do what you want for your
You do
kids, but
you.
my kids. And that's what I decided to do. And I do not regret that.
Oh, I was just going to say, I almost feel like your approach probably helped you in your health
Yeah.
because if you would have allowed yourself to get into the woe is me and focus on like, oh my God, I could die and like all of the negative and then have your kids also feeling that, I actually think that could have possibly been more detrimental to your health,
For
because you're
sure.
constantly, the negativity is, you're like, no, this is what we need to do, this is how I need to get through life. I almost feel like that must have been very helpful to have that sort of mindset.
I think it saved me.
Well,
Yeah.
if you guys follow like Joe Dispenza, who I love, and he does a lot of meditation stuff around like killing cancer and cells like that, and there's all this like science behind your mindset of it and how that is larger than we give it credit for with people that are sick, and what we're capable of doing to our mind, like our body with our minds in the headspace that we are. So I was going to tap right into what Carla said. As soon as you said that, I thought it's kind of fascinating because the stress is what kills us, right? The anxiety is what's killing us with cancer. So you're removing a huge layer of carrying the weight of your kids' heartache and pain to focus on you. And by eliminating that extra load, I'm sure it helped you recover.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I can't stress this enough. And I also think I had the luxury of doing that because they were so little. I don't take for granted, had they been, if it was
Older.
5 years down the road, it would have been impossible. I know that, you watched your dad from the
Mhm.
vantage point of, were you an adult?
I was 20 in my 20s.
Okay. So I was 18 when I'm still carrying the baggage of seeing my mom's.
Same.
Just one day she asked me to change the dressing on her wound in the back, and like I can't get it out of my head. And
Yeah.
I wrote that in the article. I'm like, if I could spare my kids even seeing me bald for a half a
Yes.
second, why would I want them to see that? And whoever does, more power to you. Like, that's a choice. My choice was, life's going to throw lots of other psychological baggage at you. I'm going to shield you from this, and that is, thank you, Lord, for letting me do that, really.
Yeah.
Yes. 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 If you've seen it and you've had to witness it as a child it's very traumatizing.
Yeah. I very much admire that approach. I think
Yeah,
that
me too.
was, I mean, it was obviously perfect for your family. And yes, people can do whatever it is that they want to do, but
Yeah.
I think that helped you immensely, and your kids.
Yeah, I
So
didn't tell them until 10 years later. So I was telling them from, a point of, they were between 12 and 16. And I only told them because I was flying from London to New Jersey to be deliver a keynote speech at a breast cancer organization annual fundraiser that I'm very involved with and have been for years. And I told them from a place of safety. I told them from when it was behind me. Imagine the difference between telling your kid something while it's happening versus, gather around, kids, I want to tell you about something that happened a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they process something that happened in the past is very different to how they process something in real time. You don't have that. They don't have that sense of uh, imminent danger and
yeah.
threat. They can
Mhm.
just chew it up in a different way and then decide, what to do with it. Now there's a book and they can read it in further detail, and they are reading it, which is delightful to me
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
adults and young adults.
Yeah.
But it's, again, I just think, no, come on, Madres, like, no judgment. No one has to be judging how anyone does anything,
Can
right?
we say that again louder for the people in the back?
No
I
one
mean,
should judge other
no
moms
more
for
fucking
doing
judgment. Like,
things the way they
Yeah.
do.
every
Yeah.
mom is out here doing their best, and we're all get to decide how we do it, what we do. I don't want to hear it from anyone anymore. I constantly get it. I don't even, I block them. I delete the comments. I'm like, I'm doing me. You do you. You focus on your home. We all have our own ways of doing it, and there's no judgment. Let's stop. Let's just stop.
Yeah.
Like, I wish I don't care about these commenters as much as they seem to care about me. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting dynamic too. It's like, all right.
Yeah. It's all, well, we always say it's all projection anyway at the
Yeah.
end of the day. It's like, it's
Yeah.
nothing to do with you, all to do with them.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm not here to fix their trauma. Like,
No.
Yeah, right. That's not our responsibility.
Yeah.
So how would you describe yourself now versus the person you were before your EFFing moment?
so as I said earlier, I'm still in some ways very much me. I look at my high school yearbook, same sarcasm, same snark, same pragmatism. I've really always been a pragmatic person. I like form meets function. But I think the difference is that I feel a lot more comfortable in my own skin, and a lot more confident in my decisions and choices. I think the more decisions and choices you make that pan out and go well, the more confidence you have to make other choices and decisions, and also to guide and advise other people. On Instagram, I get DMs from women all day, all around the world, you know, based on their own diagnosis, their own, I felt something. They keep me posted. I'll get a message 6 months later saying, just wanted to let you know I got one today, from somebody who had been finding all these, lumps and dense breast tissue, and she kept having these scares. And she today DM'd me to say, I just wanted to let you know I decided to have a preventative double mastectomy because I can't live with the uncertainty anymore. And I was like, A, amazing, like good
Yeah.
for you. And B, thank you for taking the time to tell me. Like that makes my day. So I think that's what's changed is I just feel a lot more confident in what I have to say because I'm coming from a place of experience, and I'm building on that, and I can share it with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I always love, the life's experience. I'm super open. I'm like a open book with my life. I have been for a really long time, but and because of that, I get the scrutiny of like, the judgment, right? By putting it out there. But the people that I do reach and that write those messages and are touched by your story or can relate to your story or seek some part of it and they send those messages, that's when you're just like, the rest doesn't matter. Whatever, God put me through on this earth and it's able to help somebody else when they're helped. Carla and I always say, if you help one person on this podcast, then the podcast is worth doing it. And the rest of it, it doesn't matter. And sometimes by keeping our lives and these kind of things that you've done so much research in and you know so much about and you have so much knowledge in, if you keep that a secret, then you are holding back, to other women who don't have somebody speaking up for them.
Yeah. And listen, for every one of me, there's probably hundreds, if not more, who are private and, keep it close to the
Exactly.
sleeve. And that is 100, more than 100% fine. But
Yep.
I feel lucky that I have the personality
Yeah.
where I want to share, I want to talk about it. It's not from a place of having to process my trauma. Like I've done that already. Now I have wisdom to share. Just like I
Yeah.
go to other people for other wisdoms, people come to you for wisdoms. Everyone's got their own experience they bring to the table.
100%.
I'm an open vocal person and I'm very happy to give people my time and expertise. And I agree with you about the one person, and I'm Jewish, and in Judaism there's a saying that if you save one person, you've saved a whole world. And
Yes.
I believe that wholly and entirely.
I
If
love that.
you're a humanist and you truly love humanity, you have to believe that too. So while, let the Angelinas of the world save thousands and millions, that's amazing. But I'm going to get to my one at a time. And for everyone who reads my book and passes it on to the next person, someone's going to take away something from there. Someone's going to change their behavior in some small way. Every tiny movement, every tiny shift makes a difference. And I, I'm with you, Romy. One person at a time is more than a lot of people get to do.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
That's all that matters.
Yeah. Well, this would lead me to my last question. And again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing this, being vulnerable, being a voice, right? And for women and moms, like we are very empowered by this. And of course, anyone listening, we never know who's listening and this is reaching them, right? Or causes
Right.
them to do the work or look into it. So my last question then would be, what is the message that you want to leave for your kids and just any women listening?
Well, my kids will tell you that I have a lot of messages, and everything that I say turns into a lecture. They all start like putting their fingers in their ears, like here she goes in her TED talk. But I think I want to tell people to trust their guts.
Mm.
Just trust your gut. There's a lot of information coming at us from everywhere, and we can second guess ourselves. And especially as moms, there's so many moments where we can be like, oh, I should have done this, and I see that person's doing that for their kid. You have to trust your gut, and your gut can
Mhm.
change. Your gut can change, and you have to trust that gut instinct too. But that is what I think people should know. I want my kids to know that because that comes down to just making good, confident decisions from a place of, being thoughtful and from experience and from logic.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I love it.
Where can people find your book? So your book is called Nearly Departed. I love the title. Nearly Departed: Adventures of Loss, Cancer, and Other Inconveniences.
Thank you for loving the title. I worked damn hard on that and the subtitle as well. I will never again take for granted when I hold a book in a store.
Yeah.
No, just the word inconveniences just shows that there's humor.
That's what we were going for.
You've made this the
Yeah.
I'll
situation
show you
that
the
is,
other 100 subtitles that we didn't go with.
yeah, no, I love
So
it. Where can people find your book?
Anywhere you buy books. It's online. It's in all the usual retailers. It's in Kindle. It's in hardback, Kindle, and the audio drops. I think it's on the 13th. So the audio is dropping soon, narrated by me. You can buy it anywhere. And if you do read it and enjoy it, I would love for you to DM me. I'm mostly on Instagram at Gila Pfeffer. Please give me feedback. I just want to know how the book resonated with you. Even if it's bad, like tell me. I want to know.
Yeah.
I
Love it.
doubt it is. It's your own personal memoir, so how could it be?
Yeah.
I'm proud of it. I did it.
Yeah, that's all that
Yes.
matters. That's
That
all
was
that
my
matters.
goal. I wanted to publish my story and I did it.
And you
You
did it.
did it. You did
And
it.
everyone else to know that if I can do it, you absolutely, whatever your goal is, trust me, you can do it.
Yeah.
You can fucking
yeah.
do it. This is the end then where each of us is going to say just F it. So we'll let you start and then Carla, you go and I'll finish it.
Just F it.
Just F it.
Just F it.